talk about Star Fox Zero.
Oh boy.
Peter Brown, Star Fox Zero. You've been playing it for what seems like an eternity here in the office. Finally, the review's up, embargo's out. 7 out of 10 on GameSpot.com. I was expecting a lower score, maybe a little bit, just from some of the conversations that were happening around this game. Talking to Reichert about it over Giant Bomb as well. He seems super down on it. As a big Star Fox fan, you're a big Star Fox fan as well.
I am.
Is this very much like Star Fox 64? Where does it fall short?
So it's like Star Fox 64 in the sense that it uses a lot of the same locations and characters and events and even like remarks that characters have, like the catchphrases. You know, you'll recognize them if you've played Star Fox 64.
Somebody asks you to do a barrel roll.
Yeah.
Do you then do the thing that's not a barrel roll?
It's the Himmelman.
Yeah.
The
whatever it is.
I forget what it's called. Yeah.
Hyman maneuver. Yeah.
The Hyman maneuver.
That's it. Classic.
But you know, beyond all that sort of superficial stuff, the gameplay is fundamentally different because it forces you to use the gamepad in conjunction with the TV because the levels are designed to in typical Star Fox games, where you fly is where your reticle moves.
Yeah.
It's a one-to-one connection. In this game, they're separate. You can hold down a button and keep them connected, but the moment you start shooting, the motion controls of the gamepad take over. So you're essentially using like an independent gun to fire within a 180-degree spectrum versus straight ahead.
Right.
So managing those two things, particularly looking between two screens, is very challenging, and it's proven to be a divisive mechanic. Especially for myself early on, I felt like this series is made worse by doing this. Coming out of it, I don't think it's made better by implementing it, but I got used to it, and I could appreciate Star Fox Zero on its own terms for what it is.
Well, that's kind of the thing with a lot of new control schemes is that almost immediately a lot of them, unless they feel very, very intuitive, like something like, I don't know, maybe
Wii Tennis.
Maybe Wii Tennis, for instance, yeah. There are lots of controls that you go, ooh, I don't like this. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't feel right. Like if you get like the first time I've played a racing game with wheels instead of using the control sticks on a controller, or not with wheels, sorry, with pedals. It just feels like it feels weird again.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of get used to it after a while, or it becomes less.
Yeah, I mean, I walked away from the game countless times for the first few hours because it was just I wasn't enjoying myself, and when I found myself getting frustrated, I felt like it was because something was implemented needlessly, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is them justifying the gamepad again. Like, I don't want to be a victim of their whims when it comes to feeling better about their product. But then every time I came back, like it started to click more and more. And it's sort of one of those things like, you have something in your subconscious and you don't think about it, but like in the background, like your brain is kind of like figuring stuff out. The more time I spent away from the game, I came back and I kept seeing this improvement. And so at that point, it became less of me wrestling with the controls and me just playing the game, just understanding what it was. There's even like an order of operations you kind of have to assume. Because when you're flying forward, like this game is mostly on rails, right?
Right.
Aiming, you can kind of do instinctually because you sort of begin to understand where the reticle is going to be. But it's in the all-range mode where you're flying in 3D space that it becomes particularly difficult. So I learned to look at the TV, position my ship where I want it to be with the enemies in sight, then look at the gamepad, shoot them for as long as I could, start the process over again.
Right.
It's complicated a little bit.
Especially when you just come off playing Eve Valkyrie, which actually does a really good job of marrying those two things together.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Star Fox is a very interesting game, and the opinions out there on it are equally interesting, I think. Yeah.
Seems like a good who's who of kind of old and new as well. The Landmaster tank is back in a sort of a new form.
Turn into a jet.
Yeah, the Aura-Wing can turn into a mech sometimes as well, it seems like.
Yeah, and that's sort of they implemented something like that in the unreleased version of Star Fox 2.
Right.
It's like a bipedal mech, affectionately known as the chicken, because it kind of looks and moves like a chicken. And then there's also a gyro wing. It's sort of like a drone type copter. None of those are really that fun. And this might just be me personally, but Star Fox for me, it was always about the joy of flight. Even though you were shooting enemies in the older games, that was all linked to flight in some way.
Yeah.
So everything you were doing was bound to the art of flying and that feeling you get when you're going through tight spaces and stuff like that. And when stopping to pause to use the gyrocopter to drop a robot that can go into a crevice. It just felt so tedious, and I was like, give me back to the action, So there's a lot of that here, though, which is great. So these new vehicles don't really take away from stuff. They don't really add a whole lot either, at least in my opinion.
We talked a lot about the sort of negative aspects of it. 7 out of 10 on GameSpot's a pretty decent score, though. All
it's an
things
endorsement.
considered. So what is it about this that sort of appeals to you. Like I'm a Wii U owner. I'm not somebody who grew up with Nintendo consoles, so I don't have
sorry.
that. I know, right? Commodore baby, that's my Nintendo up there.
I'm a bit jealous though that you did have access to that, because you could just copy your games.
I know, right? Yes, and then they never made one again.
Right.
But I guess I don't have that nostalgia factor with it necessarily. Star Fox 64 was always one of those games that seemed like that it was a game that it had so much impact, not just because of how it played, but also just visually and everything. What it was doing was like, holy shit, like video games can do this. Obviously, that's not necessarily the case in 2016. So what is it about Star Fox Zero that gets it a 7 out of 10?
So part of what I was talking about again is sort of the joy of flight. I think it captures the essence of movement really well. And there are a lot of levels that sort of serve as playgrounds for that sort of action. And those can either be really fast, or they can have the right mix of enemies that make something challenging in just the right way without being too frustrating, at least once you get used to the controls. So yeah, it's just like really great set pieces as well. Like, I'm not going to say the Wii U does an amazing job of making this game look incredible, but like, when you're flying around spaceships that are so big that no matter how close you fly to it, you just feel like you're not getting any closer because it's that big. It's kind of, you feel that sense of scale. So it's really the fast-paced action mixed with flying and some really great set pieces. I kind of found the nostalgia stuff that they put in there to be a hindrance, because I really wanted this to be an opportunity for a true modern sequel to Star Fox. And it's really a reimagining. They introduced some new levels and, again, vehicles and even a character. But for the most part, I felt like, okay, this is a game I've played before. It's just a little more convoluted. But that said, even though I'm done reviewing it, unlike a lot of games I review, I kind of want to keep playing this just for that fun, because it delivers something that the Wii U doesn't have, which is a great space combat game. So
there you go.
There you go. Also, if you purchase it, you get Star Fox Guard.
What's Star Fox Guard?
Star Fox
Sounds
Guard,
like a virus scanner.
Miyamoto at E3 2014 was showing off like 2 concept games, and one of them was Project Guard. It's a tower defense game where you have to monitor 12 video cameras.
Okay.
And
it's Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. So you monitor these 12 video cameras that have guns attached to them, and what you can do is you can switch to the different camos using the gamepad, and then you can shoot enemies that are trying to invade your base.
Okay.
And it's kind of just that simple. They introduce new weapons, they introduce new enemies that make things harder, but it's really fun, and it's sort of set in this comical part of the Star Fox universe where you're working with Slippy Toad's Uncle Grippy.
Oh God, that's the naming convention of that family. They're gonna run out of ideas real soon.
Yeah, it's got great character. It's really accessible and easy to understand, and the challenge ramps up in a really good way. So you have a lot of fun without getting frustrated.
So that comes out. That's just alongside of it.
That's bundled with Star Fox Zero. It's actually its own separate physical package, but then you can also buy it on its own digitally for $10.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Peter Brown. Talk about Star Fox Zero. Finally, after months of talking about it in the office, we can talk about it. Review, of course, live up on GameSpot.com. 7 out of 10. If you have any thoughts, please put them in the comments below.